Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kelowna. How many of you are from out of town? Well, most of you. How many from the lower mainland? Quite a few. Who would be the furthest, do you think? Furthest from Kelowna. Where are you from? Northwestern Ontario. Wow, anybody further than that? Where are you from? Southwestern. I thought you were going to say Europe or Africa or something like that. Wow, you guys came a long way for this. And you're further? Iowa. Wow. Iowa. Who brought the weather? You did. It's been like Vancouver in November here. I don't know what's going on, but isn't it beautiful? I mean, this is what Kelowna is supposed to be like. So whoever brought the weather, thank you very much. I'm going to start by having just a little bit of fun today. You've already been having fun, but since we're at a computer software conference, I had a little piece of humor that I wanted to just throw in this morning. Why computers are like men and women, all right? We have mostly women here today, so I'm going to start with the men. And I'm glad, guys, that you joined us because I thought I was going to get strung up. I didn't realize there would be quite a good ratio between men and women. Why computers are like women. No one but the creator understands their internal logic. Number two, the native language they use to communicate with other computers is incomprehensible to anyone else. Even your smallest mistakes are stored in long-term memory for later retrieval. Yeah, the guys are going, yeah, I get that. Number four, as soon as you make a commitment to one, you find yourself spending half your paycheck accessorizing for it. Why computers are like men? In order to get their attention, you have to turn them on. They have a lot of data, but they're this. Okay, isn't that true? They're supposed to help you solve problems, but half the time, they are the problem. And as soon as you commit to one, you realize that if you had waited just a little bit longer, you could have had a better model. I love it. When Jackie first contacted me to do this conference, I was really taken back. She explained to me the nature of the conference, and it's not uncommon for a business or an organization to bring in a speaker to talk to their people, to try to boost morale or do some training or whatever the case may be. But then she started explaining to me that they were wanting me to come speak to their clients. I thought, wow. When I started hearing the whole nature of this conference, I thought, you know, didn't know much about Vadim software, but I have to tell you, I'm pretty impressed with them, with what little I did know at the time. And so they brought me in here today to speak to you. They paid somebody to speak to you just for your benefit. This has nothing to do with them. They didn't want me to talk about them. They didn't want me to sell anything for them. I'm sure you're going to hear all you need to hear about Vadim this week. But they didn't want me to do that. They just wanted me to speak to you for your benefit. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, how can I serve them, and how can I serve you well? And I went into a convenience store one day, and I found this. Because I was thinking about motivation, and it was kind of crossing my mind, and this whole idea of motivation, I had been pondering it for a while. And I went into a store, and I found this. Now, if Red Bull gives you wings, that's got to be a rocket pack. Have you ever drank one of those? Who says size doesn't matter, right? There's enough caffeine in this sucker to knock out an elephant. So I was thinking about that. I thought I should have bought everybody one of these. Talk about motivation. We'd all be just kind of wired. You guys would be flying. It would be the best conference you'd ever been to. And if I had one before here, I'd be kind of doing dances around the stage. It'd be very entertaining. I asked Jackie this week a little bit about the setup. And she emailed me back and said, well, there's a stage. I feel like I'm towering above you here. But she said it's about 12 by 16 or something. Then she says afterwards, is that going to be big enough for you? And I fired her an email. I said, well, as long as I don't drink one of these, I'll be just fine. People ask me what I do. And I don't like to say I'm a motivational speaker. For one thing, their eyes just kind of glaze over. And people don't generally know what to do with that kind of information. I don't like to say that I'm a motivational speaker. Because who is it that really motivates us? Is it a speaker? No, it's you. You motivate. You can listen to the most boring speaker in the world, and you can still be motivated. I mean, you can think to yourself, how is it possible that he is so boring? Hopefully that's not going to be today. How is it possible that he can be so boring? And you talk to the next guy beside you, are you listening to this? This is amazing. He must really work at being this boring. And then you motivate yourself and you think, I don't want to be like that. Whatever your career choice is, you think, I'm going to do better than that. And I'm going to be better than this guy. I met a young guy once who was the son of an alcoholic. His father was very verbally, physically abusive. When they sat around the supper table, I mean, he grew up with the knowledge, with the idea, children should be what? Seen and not heard. How many of you have heard that? Yeah, most of us have heard that. But in this family, it was reinforced. And when they sat around the dinner table, if the children spoke, the father would take the butter knife and wrap them over the knuckles with the handle. Just the thought of that, to me, is painful. And if the children made noise with the fork on their teeth, have your kids ever done that? Made that grating noise? It's like rubbing your nails down a chalkboard. If the kids ever did that, they would get a rap on the knuckles. Because his dad was an alcoholic, they moved around an awful lot. He couldn't hold down a job. And so he became this kid who was kind of a wallflower. He became very shy. He walked up the side of the hallways of the school, had a hard time making friends, became so shy that by grade 11, even though he was the captain of the basketball team, he never had a date because he could barely talk to girls. He told me a story of this one time where he was walking up the hallway and a young girl batted her eyelashes at him and said hi. And he got so embarrassed, he turned red. His heart was in his throat. It was beating fast, and he just ran by. Couldn't say anything. And as he ran by into the gym to kind of hide and play basketball, she yelled after him, "You don't have to be so shy, you know." That kind of an upbringing has to affect a person and what they become. What do you think that young man became? I became a motivational speaker. I became a public speaker. Now, when I think of that, that absolutely floors me. That amazes me. When I think about that young man and what he was like, that young man became a speaker and stands before you today doing what I do, it amazes me. Do you know what the number one fear people have is? Speaking. It's the number one fear. Do you know what number two is? Necrophobia. Anybody know what that is? It's the fear of death. That means if you go to a funeral, most people there would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Think about it. And so here's this young man who becomes a speaker. And I want to tell you, if I could do that, you can do anything you set your mind to. Absolutely anything you set your, whatever that thing is in your life that you would like to accomplish, that you've been saying for years, I can't do it, you can do it. You can do anything that you set your mind to. And that's part of what self-optimization is. It's just simply the process of becoming a better you, of maximizing your potential. Now, I don't know if anybody's prepared, but I'd wanted to show a video clip. Are we prepared to do that this morning? Okay, let's show that clip now. Thank you. Isn't that what life is like? But you know what I find as I talk to people? There are too many people in life that are just trying to survive. And I don't want you to leave here today in survival mode. I want you to leave here today in success mode. Too many people get up in the morning and think, I'm just trying to survive this day. If I could just get through this day. But wouldn't it be better to get up and instead of thinking that, boy, if I could just succeed today, if I could just accomplish something that's going to put me that much further towards my goals. And that's the whole point here. There's a phenomenal study done in Yale, 1953, where they took the graduating class and they asked them this question: do you have long-term goals? And do you have a plan to attain those goals? Only 3% of the graduating class had long-term goals and a plan to attain those goals. They went back 20 years later, in 1973, to do a follow-up study. And they wanted to know what the difference was between these two groups of people. Do you know that the 3%, it was less than 3%, had accomplished more in their life, were more balanced, were more successful than the other 97%? In fact, in just financial terms, that 3% had more financial success than the whole 97% put together. Do you know why that is? It's because they focused on themselves. It's because they set goals. We often go through life focusing on other people. How many of you feel like your life is being controlled by somebody else? Say, I Your life is being controlled by circumstances, being controlled by somebody else. And I want us to think for just a few minutes this morning about yourself. Doing things for yourself. Focusing on self. Because if we're not healthy as individuals, we can't help the people around us anyway. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to take the word self. We're going to look at 4 aspects of self-optimization. And we're going to deal with each one individually. The first one, S, stands for strategy. Strategy. Strategy is just a long-term plan for success. Success has more to do with how we organize our mind, our bodies, and our resources than with what we're actually capable of. Successful people aren't necessarily the smartest or the best looking or the ones who have the most going for them. Successful people are the ones who can take what they have, whatever it is, and formulate a strategy to make it successful. In 1993, Jamie Clark climbed Mount Everest. Looking back on his success, he said these words: "When you get yourself into shape for a climb like that, you spend several hours a day working on an incline treadmill. You look goofy. You smell. It's an ugly scene." And that's always true. The road to success is not pretty. When you get to the top of the mountain, you look beautiful in all of the pictures, but it's all of the other stuff that gets you there, and it's real ugly. At 29,035 feet, Mount Everest is a pinnacle of success for any mountain climber. But you know what? You don't drive up to the bottom of Mount Everest and decide to go for a stroll, do you? You have to have a strategy. Sometimes it takes years of planning and years of preparation before you can achieve that kind of a goal. But we all want to look beautiful in the pictures, but we want to do it without a strategy, and it doesn't work that way. There's a new song that came out not too long ago called "I Want to Be a Billionaire." Have you ever heard that? You gotta love isn't it catchy? You gotta love the lyrics. I won't sing it for you, so it's okay. But some of the lyrics go like this: "I want to be a billionaire, so frickin' bad. Buy all of the things I never had. I want to be on the cover of Vogue magazine, smiling next to Oprah and the Queen." Of course, Oprah has to be in there. That looks good, doesn't it? That would be all of our ultimate idea of what we would like. And yet, it doesn't come to us by dreaming about it or by wishing for it or by singing about it. It comes by formulating a strategy. First step in formulating a strategy, you have to have a clear perception of where you are. This is not tough, but it takes brutal honesty. We have to look clearly at what our life is and have a clear perspective of where we are in our lives. I went for a visit to my friend in Revelstoke, and we loved being out in the bush. We loved hiking. So there was a local mountain with a glacier on the top of the mountain within view. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool to get up onto that glacier and explore it, spend some time exploring it? So we decided we were going to make this hike one Saturday. We got up early in the morning before dark, before light. Before dark would have been early. We got up before light. In fact, we left when it was still dark out because we wanted to get up to the top of the mountain. We're driving down the road where we know the trailhead is supposed to be, but we're enjoying the day, we're enjoying each other, we're thinking about the trip, we're talking, we're excited. We drove right past the trail. We got several miles past, we thought we better turn around. So we turned around and we went back. This time, we're being a little more careful. We're watching, we're looking. Bothering me, he wanted my food, and I didn't want any ducks around to give anybody swimmers it, so I grabbed a handful of sand and I kind of threw it at him. Now, I wasn't trying to hurt the duck, and I didn't throw it hard. I just wanted to kind of shoo him away. Well, there was a little boy, I don't know how old he was, but he was young, and he saw me do this. And he says, "Cool." And he takes off, grabs 2 fistfuls of sand, and he's running as fast as he can like a bat out of hell. And his mother sees him do this. And his mother yells after him, "Johnny, don't you throw that sand at that duck." And she takes off after him, not nearly as fast, mind you, but she takes off after him. And she goes by me. Men, you'll appreciate this. She runs by me, and she gives me the look. And you all know the look. It's that look that women have that just puts the fear of God in the heart of any man. She gave me, I thought, oh my, what did I do? That duck eventually got to the water, and his demeanor changed instantly. amazing how that happened. As soon as it was in the water, it was totally at peace. Held its head high, no more fear. That duck knew that there was not a single person on that beach that could touch him. I mean, that young boy could run all he wanted, but that duck was perfectly safe as long as he was in his element. Ducks were born to swim. One would die in the attempt. Thus, Roger Bannister says, when I got up from the track after collapsing at the finish line, I figured I was dead. Can you imagine? Roger Bannister had a goal, something he wanted so badly that he was willing to die for it. That's passion. The key to success is finding something that you are passionate about, something that will cause you to get up early in the morning, that will cause you to stay up late at night. Most people don't succeed because they simply don't know where they want to go. Now we have some idea of what we want in our lives. We want more love, more time, more money. How many here would like to have more money? Yeah, would you like to have more money? What's your name?
Roxanne.
Roxanne? I'm Gerald.
Hi, Gerald.
You call me G. You'd like to have more money?
Of course.
Okay, here you go. There's $1.
Thanks.
She just achieved her goal. But that's not what you had in mind, was it? No, lots more money. That's not what any of us had in mind, is it? No, it's not what we had in mind. But we do that to ourselves all the time. In order to empower our minds, we have to be far more specific. Break the 4-minute mile. That's a pretty specific goal. A fuzzy future has no pull power. When we start to define our future, and the more clear that picture gets in our minds, the more it's able to draw us. It becomes like a magnet, drawing us towards it. And the more specific we can be, the more pull power that is going to have in our lives. We have to have a clear vision. When I took a year off of school after grade 12 because I wanted to make some money before going to college. And I worked in a sawmill. I was working graveyard shift. I had a vehicle, but I liked taking my motorcycle to work. So I was driving my bike to work one night. It was dark because it was graveyard shift. And I didn't realize the road had been washed out. So I'm coming down the dirt road into the sawmill. It's downhill. I'm doing about 90 because I'm a little bit late, 90 clicks on this motorcycle. And all of a sudden, I see in front of me, not too far in front of me, the road is washed out, and I can see the culvert, the metal culvert down. It was that deep. And I just panicked. That just overwhelming sense of fear. So I did all that I could do. I cranked the throttle, tried to get as much power as I could, and I just yanked on the front tire to try to get it over. I was going to try to jump this thing, like any young guy would try to do. But I was going way too fast, and there was just no power there. My front tire went down into that hole, and I flew over the top of my bike. Thankfully, I was wearing steel-toed boots, and I had a metal backpack on my back. So I managed to roll onto my back, put my feet up, arch my back up off the ground, and I just slid for, I don't know how far I slid. But as I was looking up, I saw my bike spinning like this over top of me. The headlights just spinning. And it crashed on the ground and went flying and totally totaled the bike. I went into work, explained what had happened and why I was late after pushing my bike the rest of the way to the mill. And I went underneath one of the conveyor belts where I was having to do some cleanup. And I just started shaking uncontrollably. I don't know if I went into shock or what the deal was. But I learned something riding motorcycles. I learned that you hit what you focus on. You hit what you focus on. And so you never want to focus on the obstacle. If you're riding down a trail and you're a little bit out of control, you're going too fast, and you see a tree, if you look at that tree, you hit the tree. How many here have ever trained a young person how to drive? You've taught your kids how to drive? That's an experience, isn't it? What is it? You can be driving down a road, it's pretty clear, there's not a lot of traffic, and there's a pothole 100 yards down the road. And you're thinking to yourself, there's no way. It's not possible. But as you get closer and closer, you finally get there, and ka-thunk, ka-thunk, you hit the only pothole in the road. Why is that? It's because that's what they were looking at. It's the same as somebody skiing down a hill. Have you ever seen Funniest Home Videos? And there's this perfectly open hill. There's one tree in the hill. And there's a skier coming down the hill. And they nail that tree head on. And you think, they must have worked really hard to hit that one and only tree. It's because that's what they were focusing on. You never focus on your and yet we do that in life all the time, don't we? We focus on the negative. We focus on the obstacles. We focus on the circumstances that might be looming before us that are going to, we think, destroy us. But we need to focus on our preferred future. Where is it that we want to go? Once you know where you are and where you want to go, it's just a matter of figuring out how you're going to get there. We need to have a plan. A strategy is just simply a way to get what you want. You can have anything you want if you want it badly enough and you have a way to get it. We need to have a strategy. The second, actually, before I move on, when I was just a youngster, I used to love hiking. I think I've mentioned that already. My brother and I would go out every Saturday and just climb mountains, climb the hills, get out into the bush. One night, we got out really early. 4 o'clock in the morning we left. But we neglected to tell our mom we had gone. So we're walking through the bush really early in the morning. The night before, we had seen a movie called Grizzly. I don't know if you remember the movie. This is a few years ago. It's like Jaws, but kind of a land version of Jaws. Almost the identical movie. So we're going through the bush, and trees are brushing up against us. And we're freaking out because every time something touches us, we think it's a bear. The bear reaching out to get us. Something's going to get us. Well, on these trips, every once in a while, we would sneak into our dad's backpack. He was a hunter. And we would take these shotgun shells from his backpack. And we loved taking these shotgun shells into the bush. We would cut them open, and we would burn the gunpowder. Great things for kids. I don't think we started any forest fires, but looking back on it, it probably wasn't the brightest thing that we've ever done. So in grade 7, our grade 7 class is asked to do a project. And I decided to do a volcano. And I built this beautiful volcano out of paper mache. And I thought, well, what am I going to do to make this thing erupt? And they told me, you mix vinegar and baking soda, right? And you'll get an eruption. Well, I did that, and it didn't look very good. It was I've had runny noses that were a little bit more powerful than this. I put a little color in. That didn't do the trick either. So then I thought, oh, I got an idea. Over a number of weeks, I took as many shotgun shells out of my dad's backpack as I could without thinking that I would get caught. Now, he never suspected, I don't think, at least he never said anything. And I had a half a bottle full of gunpowder. So when it came time for the presentation, I carried my volcano up to the front of the class. And I put it in front of the class. And I dropped a match into the volcano. And it didn't take long before this thing started to smoke. Sparks started to shoot out. Flames shot out. The flames were shooting as high as the ceiling and kind of bouncing off the ceiling. Smoke was billowing up and across the ceiling, and it finally started to billow outside of the door. Within just 30 seconds or so, the fire alarm went off. You could hear people in the hallway, what is going on? I looked back at the back of the class, and my teacher was sitting there. And he just had these big eyes, and his face just drained of color. And you could just see him. If he lived in the texting days, it was just, OMG, what have I done? So all the kids in the class were standing on their feet. They were clapping and yelling, yeah! We all get evacuated out of the school. Fire trucks show up, the whole deal. And I'm just, basking in the glow of my creativity. It was an awesome moment for a grade 7 student. Totally awesome. That was the best volcano in the history of the grade 7 volcanoes. At least I think so. And you're not going to burst my bubble because it was awesome. Really awesome. But why was it so successful? Because I had a strategy. I would have looked pretty foolish standing up there with no way of making anything happen. Just this paper. Vinegar and baking soda would have been better than nothing. I want you to hear me say something today. You have that kind of explosive potential. Everybody does. All you need is a spark to light it. All you need is a strategy. You have within you qualities, talents, abilities. You have the ability to do things that you never dreamed, you never imagined possible. You have the ability to put your stamp on your family like you never imagined possible, to put your stamp on your community, on your workplace, on your world. just to do things that you never dreamed possible. But all we need to accomplish those things is a strategy that is clear, that will give us direction and purpose in our lives. We all need a strategy. I know this young woman that is just a remarkable young woman. She told me a story about her life, and she went through a really tough time that was filled with fear and struggle. And she said she just got tired of living this way. And so she decided to give her year a theme. Now, this was more than a New Year's resolution. She actually gave her year a theme, and she did this for several years successfully. One year she called the Year of No Fear. When I heard this story, I thought, wow, that's remarkable. I got out a pen and paper. I started writing, can I please use this for one of my talks? I thought it was remarkably, she wouldn't have called it a strategy, but it's exactly what she did. A year of no fear. And one of the things that she did, one of the things she strategized is she decided, I'm going to meet 50 people this year that I don't know. That was really tough for her. Just walk up to them in Starbucks, introduce herself, start talking. 50 people. She thought it was going to destroy her. She got partway through the year and realized she had done it. And it made a huge change in her lives, simply because she established a strategy. Have you ever heard the phrase, up the creek without a paddle? Anybody? That's quite a predicament when you think about it. Imagine being up a creek without a paddle. Imagine being on the Niagara Falls up the creek without a paddle. What happens? You have no way to give yourself direction. You have no way of propulsion to move yourself forward. People who live their lives without a strategy are basically living up the creek without a paddle. They have no way to move forward. They have no way to give themselves direction. They're basically at the mercy of life and circumstances, and they're being carried along by the currents of life. And we don't want to live that way. We want to have more control than that of our lives, and so we need to live with strategy. That's the S. The E stands for expertise. Expertise. There is a story, an ancient story, about a time when all of the animals formed their own school. And they formed a well-balanced curriculum of swimming, running, climbing, and flying. And all of the animals had to take all of the classes. Well, the duck was an expert swimmer. She was better than anybody, better than the instructor, but she wasn't a very good runner. And so she had to stay after class to practice her running. Problem with that is her poor webbed feet became so worn that she became only an average swimmer. But guess what, folks? Average is okay, isn't it? So nobody ever worried about it. Nobody except the duck, that is. Well, the rabbit was a peak performer in running class, but had to spend so much time practicing his swimming that he developed this funny twitch in his leg. The squirrel was an avid climber that didn't do very well in flying class. He was keen. The squirrel was a real keener. He would run off the end of the branches and just extend himself, put his arms and legs out and try to fly. But gravity would catch him and he would go flying to the ground, crashing into all the branches and thud onto the, kind of like Wile E. Coyote used to do. Pretty soon his body became so badly bruised that he wasn't a very good climber either, and he couldn't run without a limp. The eagle was a continual problem student. The eagle was a nonconformist. The eagle would, in climbing class, would beat everybody to the top of the tree, but she always insisted on her own way of getting there. All of the animals had their own design. They were born to do something special, what I call their expertise. When they did what they were designed to do, they excelled.